Olá, seja bem-vinda e seja bem-vindo a mais um programa Agro América, aqui no canal AgroMais. Programa produzido em parceria com o Instituto Interamericano de Cooperação para a Agricultura, aqui direto da Costa Rica, continuando mais uma entrevista com um dos ministros da Agricultura de um dos países caribenhos que mais tem uma produção e uma produtividade no campo avançada. Vamos falar com Avinash Singh, que é ministro no Ministério de Agricultura, Solos e Pesca de Trinidad e Tobago. Minister, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure to be here.
I thought it was very interesting when you pointed out that there's two ministers at the ministry, and you were one of them here, gracing your presence with us to talk about your wonderful country.
That's right. So Trinidad and Tobago, we currently have two ministers, one minister of the ministry and one minister in the ministry. So I am there to support the minister in his operational matters, and so this conference, both of us couldn't come. So he has graciously asked me to represent him here, and I'm here trying to represent the interests of Trinidad and Tobago.
Fantastic. So Trinidad and Tobago is quite a different case in terms of when we compare to other countries, in terms of its advances in production of fruits, herbs, different types of greens, as well as in agro-processing standard that is very high in the region. Talk us a little bit about what is it like today, what is the reality of agriculture and these different sides of it in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, so historically, Trinidad and Tobago has always been one of the key and major players in the cocoa industry. In fact, at one point in time, cocoa was like our black gold. And also the sugar industry, which we would have been in up to 2003, when the preferential treatment offered to the Caribbean countries was no more. That crop, that entire production monoculture of having sugarcane, vast sugarcane fields, that era ended. And what we sought to do is transform our agricultural system and sector now to the modern day society. So you've had a lot of farmers who have, been in the agricultural sector using their traditional methods, but also you have the generation like myself, the younger persons wanting to get into agriculture. And the best way to mesh both of them is to come up with programs and incentives and subsidies that will encourage the young generation of persons. So we have a lot of persons now being registered into the ministry's database as registered farmers who are on small and medium holdings. So we have a few commercial scale farmers, but the majority, I would say, is really small and medium sized farmers. Now with the climate change issues being real to all of us in small island developing nations, as well as the rest of the world, you really have to change the way we do agriculture. So farmers now are moving in the direction of technology and innovation. And that is something I am always looking for anywhere, any part of the world I venture to. That is the first thing I look for, how countries getting their young people involved in agriculture. What are the systems, what are the models, what are the mechanisms? So this being my first time here in Costa Rica, I am particularly excited and pleased to really go out into the field and see the models that are available. So we're talking about shade houses, we're talking about greenhouse farming, hydroponic, aeroponic, vertical farms, LED technology, robotics, drone technology. All of these things is here. All of these things are available for the young generation now to capitalize and really put into use into their production models. And I can tell you, I'll share something. I mean, I was bred and I grew up knowing that you cannot have food being produced without soil and water and even sunlight. And now with the model that we are seeing throughout, most developed countries, you can actually have food being produced in sub-zero conditions, in caves. I see some countries are actually doing their seed trials and systems. No soil, no sunlight. You have LEDs that is being used now. So that is now attractive to the young people, and that is the direction Trinidad and Tobago is going in. Like I said, we are not throwing out the traditional methods of agriculture because my parents and my grandparents, they were farmers and they continue to farm. but I have now been able to bring forth all the experience, all the academics into being and bring forth technology to help our farming models be semi-mechanized and be able to cut down on our labor bill and be able to produce more efficient, more effective, lower the cost of production, thereby giving the people a more affordable commodity for consumption. So that is where Trinidad has really taken the lead in the agro-processing area, because that is a very, very attractive area for the young people who are taking the primary produce and they're converting it into value added. So we in the Caribbean, we like our sauces, we like our pepper, the spices, and pepper sauce grown in Trinidad. I mean, for years we have featured as the hottest pepper in the world, the Moruga scorpion. We have now been downgraded to the Caroline Reaper, so we are probably second, third, somewhere around there, but it's still one of the best spicy peppers in the world. So even cocoa, being a country that we normally win first prize almost every international chocolate tasting or competition there is, Trinidad and Tobago captures that market with fine or flavor cocoa originating from Trinidad and Tobago. And historically, we are one of those countries that have over 100 years of research and development on cocoa cultivars that are shared, internationally. So that is something people always look forward to. Cocoa beans coming from Trinidad that is used to flavor chocolates throughout the world, the high value chocolates. And also our vegetable production is quite significant, as well as our root crop production. Root crop varieties are significant in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, we consume quite a number of varieties of the sweet potatoes, cassava, yam, dasheen, all those, I think taro, all of these varieties are grown in significant quantities and now being used in the agro-processing industry. So rather than having a French fry from Irish potato, you can now have French fries from local sweet potato, local yam, taro, cassava, as the case may be. Even flour, the traditional conventional flour is wheat. So now we have small agro-processors that are venturing into this uncharted territory of producing locally made flour. Flour and rice being two of the staples in Trinidad and Tobago, the import volumes are quite significant in terms of the food import bill. So any amount of food that we can produce locally in whatever form or format, I think is going to make a significant impact in Trinidad and Tobago's local food and nutrition trust of achieving the 25 by 2025, which was set by CARICOM in all our territories to reduce our food import bills.
What is your food import bill today?
At present, our food import bill in Trinidad and Tobago ranges just over 5 billion TT dollars.
5 billion
annually.
TT dollars?
Yeah.
What is that in terms of US dollars?
But that is just under, I would say, between 800 million, about 8 million US dollars, just
8
around
million US dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it seems like there's so much variety and so much technology being implemented in Trinidad and Tobago, and I see you as one of the role models, you could say, that is now a person who is a farmer, who now is in a position of implementing new policies for farmers and looking at technology as the future. You said earlier to me that you were in Brazil, you're looking at technology, and obviously there needs to be a development for technology for small-scale farmers. But one of the most interesting things that you mentioned is actually protected farming and protected agriculture. You gave various examples of that, and it seems like the Caribbean is the right place for this to be developed and implemented, given the climate insecurity that exists. Obviously from the hurricane season, but all over the world, we're facing challenges given the changes in the climate. What is the priority today for you, given what was spoken about in the meeting earlier with the other ministers of agriculture in terms of interregional trade? How important it is, how likely it is for you?
So that point, intra-regional trade is significant for us in Trinidad and Tobago. And we really saw the impacts and the necessity to really strengthen our ties with countries closest to us. What this Russia-Ukraine conflict has really opened the eyes of many small developing nations to where their raw materials come from. And I was fortunate to visit Roraima with the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and His Excellency President Dr. Irfan Ali of Guyana. Roraima being the border between Brazil and Guyana, significant potential for raw materials in the feed manufacturing industry, soybean, corn, sorghum, those types of commodities that we in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a very vibrant livestock industry, a magnificent poultry industry. Poultry industry in Trinidad and Tobago utilizes substantial amount of grains for the manufacturing of animal feed. And that is where this entire logistics, the conversation on logistics today at the ministerial meeting is something high on the agenda for CARICOM. The accessing of raw material in the form of corn and soya and even wheat, if it can be grown right here in the Caribbean region. The technology I saw in Roraima, which is more Brazilian-based technology in beef farming as well as the grain cultivation. The type of machinery, the type of equipment, it is game-changing. I saw that for myself. The Honorable Prime Minister was amazed, and immediately we signed a MOU with Guyana to have closer collaboration and be able to gain access to the wealth of expertise, machinery, equipment, and systems. Because Guyana being probably, the country with probably the most land mass in the Caribbean, vast amount of freshwater reserves, as well as the land asset. Trinidad having the expertise in the agro-processing, manufacturing. This whole conversation today taking place here where the CARICOM is concerned really is for us to get closer and start that word. In fact, it was Director General Dr. Otero raised the word of cooperation. We can do it if we do it together. If all the countries, as small we might be in mass, size, or financial standing, if we come together and chart a way forward for our people's benefit, I think we can make it happen in terms of raw materials, in terms of increased productivity, in terms of, you raised an excellent point, because that is something a lot of policymakers forget in terms of shaping small and micro facilities, models, and machinery and equipment for the home gardeners, the small farmers, the backyard gardeners. All of these people make a contribution to the agricultural sector of the respective countries. And we are always concerned about mass production. But if you have 100 farmers doing 1 acre each in their small little way, it equates to 100 acres of production. And that is where the small equipment, the small machinery, the hand tractors, hand tillers, the robotic engineering, drone technology can really make a difference to the small farmer. And that is something we are seeing, gaining a lot of attraction and attention now by the CARICOM nations and CARICOM territories, because we realize it is the small and medium farmers that really make a difference in terms of when you bring all of this produce together and be able to coordinate an approach where food and nutrition security is concerned. So that is something that I saw in Brazil, having been to Brazil myself personally, I think it's the second largest agri-expo in the world. I toured for 5 days and did not even cover 50% of the expo. I used two sneakers in the process, and I was blown away. This was a couple of years ago, and the level of technology, what is available for the agricultural sector is a game changer now. And it's for countries like Brazil, countries like Argentina, Uruguay, countries like the Latin American, Southern American countries to share in this wealth of engineering, robotics, mechanical engineering, technology. And we will get there. We will be able to make a difference and really contribute to our food security in a meaningful way. So that is something I would really like to see. And the conversations coming out in terms of climate smart technology, that is something high on the agenda of this ECA session. and also training and facilitation of our farmers. So ICA continues to blaze the trail where training and development, research is something that is critical in boosting our local economies one by one. And that is something I'm particularly grateful to ICA and all of the respective local teams, because they really go out of the way to train persons. I mean, I was invited to a graduation ceremony by ICA and the USDA, where they trained our agro-processors, one agro-processor representative from each manufacturing company in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's trained the trainer. So ICA would have trained these persons, food technologists, microbiologists, agricultural engineers, these persons, to understand what is required to tap into the foreign markets, the US market, the Canadian market, the European Union market, and be able now to carry that level of expertise back to their respective factories and be able to have global gap certification, be able to trade so you can get your products in the Walmarts, in the Price Marts, and all of these international food chains. And that is something that is critical, and it really, it's greener pastures on the horizon coming out of the discussions and the topics for discussions here in Costa Rica. And that is something I'm really looking forward to really benefit from everybody's experience, where we can take back to our respective countries and make some meaningful policy changes that the countries could benefit from.
Fantastic. Minister Singh, we talked a little bit about agriculture. There's a different reality of agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'd also like to talk about fisheries. A lot have been talked about in terms of how to make fishing in the ocean more productive, more safer, let's say, and also looking at the renovation of fishing fleets, as well as training fishermen to go further out in the ocean in a safe manner and come back with good results. What is that like? What are the plans for the ministry in Trinidad and Tobago?
Right, so we have a vibrant fishing industry as well, and Trinidad and Tobago, as you know, is 2 islands and 1 state. So we have a lot of coastal communities, rural coastal communities, who livelihoods is fishing. I was born and I grew up in a fishing community, and my relatives, my grandparents, while we were farmers, we were all also fishermen. So I'm actually experiencing both. I spent some long days and late nights fishing in the Gulf of Paria in Trinidad and Tobago, and I systematically saw the decline in catch, and I systematically saw the challenges our fishermen go through, and hence the reason why this push now is for aquaculture farming. Trinidad has more gravitated towards intensive farming models of aquaculture, and even to some more innovative systems of hydroponic systems. So aquaculture mixed with hydroponics, and they utilize the synergy of both systems, and you get a commercial product at the end from both. What we are seeing now, because Trinidad and Tobago's fisheries legislation is quite outdated, it's over 100 years old, it has not really captured the true essence of sustainable harvest. And so now, as I speak to you, I'm also part of the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago that is exploring the significant changes, sweeping changes that will come to the fisheries sector in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a draft legislative agenda, we have a draft bill before the Parliament. It's in a Joint Select Committee stage where everybody, all stakeholders, government, opposition, independent, civil society get to contribute to the shaping of that law. And that law will come in Trinidad and Tobago, which will really regulate our industry. And when I say we have a more intensive model, so you have more container-style fishing facilities, we really don't have much. In fact, we don't have any open sea cultivation models. All is inland, and of course, that's a challenge by itself to do fishing production inland. So it's a lot more expensive to do, and because of the cost factor and the return on the investment on aquaculture systems, it has really not attracted the kind of clients we would like to. So now we have extended our arms to Guyana, who simply, their water territory is quite vast, and they have a lot of marshland farming and brackwater shrimp and freshwater species farming. So Guyana has extended the expertise, and we signed an MOU for Guyana's technical team to come to Trinidad and Tobago, do a survey of what we have, and be able to advise or guide us in expanding of the sector. Because one thing we have is a taste for seafood. I mean, we're an island around water, so almost every menu must have lobster, fish, crab, calamari, you name it. And it's high on our taste buds and as well as our culture. But we must do it sustainable. So that model that we have, and tilapia farming is probably the only commercialized aquaculture system that we have, as well as ornamental fish farming, which is now gaining some traction. But the tilapia as a species has been marketed as one of the commodities that we would like to push, as well as some freshwater varieties that culturally our diaspora throughout the world, they look to Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, the rest of the Caribbean region to be able to supply them with those needs. So the aquaculture, while it is something in work in progress, I have every confidence that with the assistance of players who have the expertise, together with our financial and our capacity, we would be able to shape a model that would be attractive enough and commercially profitable that could be utilized and mass produced in the years to come. So that is something I'm hopeful. We tried indoor shrimp farming as well, but it turned out to be quite an expensive exercise. And so, the tilapia farming is something that we are looking at, and it's something that our fishermen are gravitating towards because we have a good market for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at, you spoke a lot about the diversity of so much of agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago. It seems that you're quite advanced. It seems like food security is something that is true, is solid within the country. One of the challenges I think that all the countries share is insurance also for food producers, meaning be it they agricultural producers with protected measures, for agriculture or fishing. What is that? How is the reality of that in Trinidad and Tobago? Is there a plan designed already for enhancing or creating insurance for farmers?
So where insurance is concerned for farmers, insurance is really managed by the private sector industries in Trinidad. And of course, agriculture being probably the highest risk environment of investment, the private sector companies have all, they all, shunned away from insuring agricultural operation and agricultural production. So we have turned to our international players, ICA, we have turned to FAO, to CADI, to United Nations, all these international agencies to try to help us in this avenue. Because if you speak to any Caribbean territory, crop insurance is always a hot debate as to is it successful, how it's being done, is it contribution that farmers have to make, and how to get the right mix. So we installed in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a flood mitigation system in the form of a relief payment to our farmers when natural disaster strikes. So if there's flooding and our crop farmers, registered crop farmers, face losses, for example, you have a tomato field and the entire field was flooded due to natural disaster flooding, there is a mechanism in place. The farmers don't get 100% back, but they at least get a percentage of their costs to at least start back up for the next cycle of the crop. Together with all the incentives and subsidies for farmers to try to put in mechanisms themselves. So there's a number of agricultural incentives and subsidies, grant funding that are available, that we make available to the farmers to try to assist in flood mitigation strategies, in terms of pond construction, water harvesting, all those systems we have. But it's something that we really, as a nation, as a territory, we really need to put a little more effort into getting the right product. I mean, our country is insured with a CARICOM insurance policy that kicks in when the country receives higher than normal rainfall. But of course, that that form of a relief, it's not enough to really supplement the losses that a country has sustained during a natural disaster. So that also supplements the natural order of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of our social programs, our agricultural flood mitigation systems, and so on. But it's not enough, and you can never really predict, how much flood the country is going to get in the preceding, from the preceding year. And that is something we have had some challenges in terms of getting back, because it tends to affect the supply and demand of our produce, and it drives the prices up significantly. So right after there's a flood, tomato would be selling $1 US per pound, and right after the flood, a few weeks after, tomato will go up to $5 US per pound. And that is the gap of where the prices can fluctuate from supply and demand due to natural disasters and flooding. So that is something I would like to raise, and I will be raising at this ECA meeting for technical support in helping us in Trinidad and Tobago, shape the right framework for crop insurance or agricultural insurance. I'm not sure if there's any successful model out there. There were talks about a contributory system, just like how private sector would have their pension plans. That safety net to farmers, it has been spoken about in different countries, different regions, and I'm not sure if the farmers would buy into that, where they make a contribution and then it is supplemented by external source. But that is something definitely on the conversations.
Fantastic.
Crop insurance, to really alleviate some of the challenges farmers have to go through after there is natural disaster.
Fantastic. Minister Singh, thank you very much
for having me.
For this interview. Concluímos aqui mais uma entrevista com um dos mais importantes ministros da Agricultura dos países caribenhos, o ministro Singh, de Trinidad e Tobago. E fique por aqui, continue acompanhando a programação do canal AgroMais e eu te aguardo no nosso próximo programa. Até mais.